hangs cold and distant above the divine tower of Lernia, its pale light casting long shadows across weathered stone. Here, at the apex of this ancient spire, lies a sight that would haunt even the most hardened. Tarnished, a corpse, charred and blackened, sitting eternally upon a throne of her own making. This is no ordinary death, no simple murder. The body bears the half-wheel wound of the Cursemark of death, a divine brand that tells a story of conspiracy, rebellion, and a plot so audacious it shattered the very foundations of the Golden Order itself. Welcome, lore seekers, to another deep dive with Kiansa Malor, where tonight we unravel perhaps the most elaborate conspiracy in all the lands between, the calculated rebellion of Ranni the Witch. Her tale isn't merely one of assassination or political intrigue. No. What Ranni orchestrated was nothing less than a cosmic revolution, a rejection of divine predetermination that required her to murder a demigod, destroy her own flesh, and set into motion events that would see the world itself brought to ruin. To understand Ranni's conspiracy, we must first understand what she was rebelling against. The Two Fingers, those grotesque arbiters of the greater will, had chosen her for a fate she found intolerable. She was to be an Empyrean, a candidate to succeed Queen Marika as the vessel for a new age of divine order. But where others might see honor in such selection, Ranni saw only chains. Golden chains, perhaps, decorated with the finest jewels of promised godhood, but chains nonetheless. The evidence of her rebellion lies scattered across the lands between like pieces of a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different aspect of her grand design. In Nokron, the Eternal City, we find the Fingerslayer Blaidd, a weapon of such heretical purpose that its very existence speaks to centuries of planning. At the Church of Vows, we encounter the spirit of Ranni herself, cloaked in illusion and speaking in riddles. And throughout our journey, we meet her co-conspirators, some willing, some coerced, and some who never truly understood the role they played in her elaborate scheme. What makes Ranni's story so compelling isn't just the scope of her conspiracy, but the fundamental question at its heart. Is free will worth any price? Is independence from divine control worth the death of innocence, the shattering of the world, the untold suffering that followed? These aren't questions with simple answers, and perhaps that's why Ranni remains one of the most fascinating and divisive characters in From Software's pantheon. Born to Radahn and Ranni, Ranni entered the world bearing the weight of two extraordinary lineages. Her father, the red-haired champion who would become Elden Lord and later reveal himself to be Marika herself in masculine form, though this truth remained hidden during Ranni's youth. Her mother, Ranni of the Full Moon, last queen of the Carian royal family and master of glintstone sorcery. From birth, Ranni existed at the intersection of two worlds, the Golden Order's divine mandate and the Carian tradition of lunar mysticism. The Carian royal family commanded respect long before their alliance with the Golden Order. Their mastery over glintstone sorcery and their connection to the primeval current made them formidable enough that even Radagon's initial campaigns against them ended not in conquest, but in marriage. This union should have been the perfect synthesis of power, divine authority married to arcane knowledge. Yet it would produce in Ranni something neither side anticipated, a child who would reject both legacies in favor of forging her own path. As an Empyrean, Ranni represented one of only 3 candidates deemed worthy by the Two Fingers to potentially succeed Marika. Her siblings Malenia and Miquella shared this dubious honor, each marked by the cosmic lottery of birth with bodies and souls capable of serving as vessels for an outer god's influence. But being an Empyrean meant more than just potential godhood. It meant having a shadow assigned by the Two Fingers themselves, a beastman companion programmed at the deepest level to ensure the Empyrean's path aligned with the greater will's design. Blaidd was given to Ranni as her shadow, a loyal wolfman whose devotion ran deeper than mere loyalty. His very existence was tied to hers, his purpose encoded into his being by the Two Fingers. Should Ranni ever truly rebel against her ordained path, Blaidd's programming would activate, transforming him from protector to executioner. This insidious safeguard reveals the true nature of the Two Fingers gift, not an honor but a collar, not a companion but a warden. Yet even in her youth, Ranni found a different mentor, one whose influence would prove far more significant than any lesson from the Golden Order. The Snow Witch, that mysterious figure whose doll would later serve as Ranni's vessel, introduced the young Empyrean to something the Two Fingers could never have anticipated: the Dark Moon. Not the full moon of her mother Ranni, but something older, colder, and crucially independent from the Greater Will's cosmic hierarchy. The Dark Moon represented possibility outside the established order. Where the Greater Will demanded submission and the Two Fingers decreed fate, the Dark Moon offered something else entirely. Not freedom in the simple sense, for the moon too was a form of cosmic influence, but choice. The choice to serve a different master, to follow a different path, to reject the binary of submission or destruction that the Greater Will presented. This early exposure to alternative cosmic powers planted the seeds of rebellion in Ranni's mind. She began to see the Golden Order not as the natural state of the world, but as one interpretation among many, one cosmic colonization that had simply been more successful than others. The Two Fingers weren't messengers of absolute truth, but salesmen for a particular brand of divine tyranny. And if there were other options, other powers, other futures possible, then why should she accept the one chosen for her? If you're finding value in this exploration of Ranni's rebellion so far, consider subscribing to support the channel and join our growing community of lore enthusiasts. Your support truly makes these deep investigations possible, allowing us to uncover the hidden truths buried within the lands between. The Night of the Black Knives stands as the pivotal moment when Ranni's philosophical rebellion became physical reality. This wasn't a crime of passion or a desperate escape attempt. Every element was calculated, every participant carefully chosen, every consequence anticipated and accepted. To orchestrate the simultaneous death of her body and Godwyn's soul required not just determination, but resources, allies, and above all, a fragment of Destined Death itself. Destined Death, the very concept the Golden Order had sealed away to create their age of immortality. Maliketh, Marika's shadow and half-brother, guarded this principle within his black blade, ensuring that true death could never again touch the demigods or threaten the eternal rule of the Golden Order. Yet somehow, Ranni acquired a fragment of this ultimate power. The game tells us she stole it, but the mechanics of this theft remain frustratingly vague. Did she physically infiltrate Farah Mazula? Did she have assistance from within Marika's own circle? The specifics remain shrouded, but the result is undeniable. She possessed the one tool capable of permanently killing a god. The Black Knife assassins she chose as her instruments were no random mercenaries. These Numen women, sharing Marika's own distant homeland, possess skills honed specifically for divine murder. Their ability to move unseen, to strike without warning, made them perfect for what needed to be done. But their selection raises troubling questions. The Numen connection to Marika herself suggests layers to this conspiracy that go beyond Ranni's individual rebellion. Were these assassins acting solely on Ranni's behalf, or did they serve multiple masters that night? The ritual itself required precise timing and coordination. As the Black Knife struck down Godwyn the Golden and Leyndell, Ranni simultaneously destroyed her own body, splitting the Cursemark of death between them. Godwyn's soul perished while his body lived on, becoming the Prince of Death whose corrupted form would spread death root throughout the lands between. Ranni's body died while her soul endured, freed from the flesh that marked her as an Empyrean and bound her to the Two Fingers' will. This wasn't just murder and suicide elegantly orchestrated. It was a metaphysical hack of the Golden Order's own systems. By splitting the Cursemark, Ranni created an impossibility within the Greater Will's perfect order. She existed outside the binary of life and death, neither fully alive nor properly dead, occupying a liminal space where the Two Fingers' control couldn't fully reach. She had found a loophole in divine law and exploited it with surgical precision. The immediate aftermath sent shockwaves through the lands between that persist even in the game's present timeline. Marika, discovering her beloved son Godwyn murdered and corrupted, shattered the Elden Ring itself in grief or rage, or perhaps according to her own hidden design. The shattering war that followed would see the demigod children tear each other apart in pursuit of power, reducing the lands between to a collection of hostile kingdoms ruled by mad gods and would-be tyrants. Ranni watched it all unfold from her hidden position, now inhabiting the cold porcelain form of the Snow Witch's doll. Did she feel guilt for the chaos she'd unleashed? The game suggests not. When we meet her, she speaks of that night with clinical detachment, acknowledging her role without apology. She knew the cost and deemed it acceptable. The suffering of thousands, perhaps millions, weighed against her personal freedom from cosmic tyranny. The conspiracy required more than just assassins and stolen death. Ranni's siblings, at least some of them, were brought into her confidence. Praetor Rykard received the blasphemous claw, a tool specifically designed to challenge Malekith should the shadowbound beast come seeking vengeance for the theft of Destined Death. This gift reveals remarkable foresight. Ranni anticipated potential retaliation and armed her brother accordingly. That Rykard accepted this role, knowing it would mark him as a co-conspirator in the highest form of heresy, speaks to either sibling loyalty or his own hunger for power outside the Golden Order's structure. The evidence suggests Radahn too played a role, though perhaps unwittingly. His mastery over gravity magic allowed him to hold the very stars in stasis, freezing the cosmic movements that governed fate itself. As long as the stars remained still, Ranni's destiny as an Empyrean was suspended, unable to progress along the path the Two Fingers had ordained. Whether Radahn knew his sister's plans or simply responded to a request to demonstrate his ultimate power remains unclear. But his role was crucial. Without the stars held in check, Ranni's rebellion might have been impossible. Blaidd, her shadow, presents the most tragic element of her conspiracy. Bound by his very nature to serve her, yet programmed to destroy her should she rebel, he existed in an impossible position. Ranni's solution was typically cold and pragmatic. She would keep him close, but ultimately accept his inevitable madness and death as another necessary sacrifice. His loyalty to her transcended even his Two Fingers programming for a time, but eventually the cognitive dissonance would destroy him. She knew this from the beginning and proceeded anyway. War Counselor E.G., the giant blacksmith and strategist, provided practical support and protective magics. His illusory barriers and misdirection helped hide Ranni from those who would hunt her. Yet even he seemed not to fully grasp the extent of what his mistress had done until near the end. His eventual death at the hands of Black Knife assassins raises questions about whether Ranni's tools eventually turned against her inner circle, or she herself orchestrated their elimination to remove loose ends. His knowledge of turning living beings into puppets might have contributed to Ranni's understanding of how to transfer her soul into the doll body. Though she clearly despised him, she tolerated his presence and perversions as long as he served a purpose. This willingness to work with even the most morally repugnant individuals reveals the depth of Ranni's commitment to her goals. But perhaps the most important conspirator was one who wouldn't appear for ages, hence the Tarnished who would eventually complete what Ranni started. She needed someone capable of killing demigods, of challenging the Two Fingers directly, of retrieving the Fingerslayer blade from the Eternal Cities, and ultimately of defeating the Elden Beast itself. The Tarnished became her unwitting and then willing accomplice, drawn into her web through a mixture of manipulation, genuine affection, and shared purpose. The true brilliance of Ranni's conspiracy lies not in its individual components, but in how she wove them together across vast spans of time. She played a game measured in centuries, each move calculated generations in advance. While her siblings fought and died in the shattering war, she waited. While the lands between burned and rotted, she planned. Her patience was absolute, her focus unwavering. To understand why Ranni would orchestrate such elaborate destruction, we must examine what she was rebelling against. The Greater Will, through its two fingers intermediaries, offers a very specific vision of order. It's a hierarchical system with clear rules, defined roles, and predictable outcomes. Gods rule according to cosmic law. Order is maintained through control. Death is banished to preserve stability. Free will exists only within prescribed boundaries. For most beings in the lands between, this system was simply reality. The sun rises, water flows downhill, and the Greater Will governs cosmic order. These were facts of existence, not choices to be questioned. But Ranni, perhaps influenced by her early exposure to the Dark Moon or simply possessing a uniquely rebellious spirit, saw it differently. She recognized the Golden Order as artificial, imposed rather than natural, one possible configuration among infinite alternatives. The two fingers had chosen her to be a god, but godhood under the Greater Will meant becoming a vessel, not a ruler. She would be the pot, not the potter, the instrument rather than the musician. Her body would host cosmic power. Her will would bend to cosmic purpose, and her individual identity would dissolve into the role prescribed for her. Even Marika, for all her apparent power, was ultimately a slave to the Greater Will's design, unable to truly rebel without destroying herself in the process. Ranni's rejection of this fate wasn't mere petulance or selfish desire for power. Her actions suggest a fundamental philosophical disagreement with the very concept of imposed cosmic order. She believed that beings should have the right to determine their own fates, to choose their own paths, even if those choices led to suffering or chaos. Better to rule in hell than serve in heaven, but more than that, better to choose hell freely than be forced into paradise. The Dark Moon offered an alternative framework, though calling it freedom would be overly simplistic. The moon represented distance, cold observation rather than hot control. Where the Greater Will demanded direct intervention and constant management, the Dark Moon suggested governance from afar, influence through inspiration rather than domination. It was still a form of cosmic power, still an outer god or entity with its own agenda, but one that allowed for greater individual agency within its design. This philosophical stance extended beyond her personal situation. Ranni's Age of Stars ending doesn't promise happiness or prosperity for the lands between. Instead, she offers uncertainty, fear, doubt, all the emotions the Golden Order sought to banish. She would remove the divine presence from immediate interaction with the world, placing her order on a dark path far from human reach. People would be free to make their own choices, forge their own destinies, and yes, suffer their own consequences without divine intervention to save or damn them. Some interpret this as nihilistic or cruel, abandoning the world to darkness. But Ranni would argue it's the ultimate gift, the freedom to be human rather than puppets in a cosmic play. The fear and loneliness she promises aren't bugs, but features, the natural state of beings forced to confront existence without comfortable divine certainties. It's existentialism made manifest, a cosmic revolution that places responsibility squarely on individual shoulders. The cost of this freedom was astronomical. Godwyn's death and corruption created the Deathroot Plague that would poison the lands between for generations. The Shattering War killed countless innocents. The breakdown of the Golden Order led to omens being hunted, misbegotten enslaved, and those who lived in death persecuted. Ranni knew these consequences were likely, perhaps inevitable, and proceeded anyway. This calculated acceptance of collateral damage reveals the cold logic at Ranni's core. She operates on a utilitarian calculus that weighs cosmic freedom against immediate suffering and finds the trade acceptable. The thousands who died in the Shattering War, the millions who suffered under the rule of mad demigods, the very fabric of reality torn and infected, all acceptable losses in her war against predetermination. Her transformation into the doll body represents this philosophy made physical. She abandoned the flesh that connected her to the Greater Will's design, choosing instead a form of her own selection. The doll, modeled after her mentor, the Snow Witch, was both limitation and liberation. She lost the power and presence of her demigod body, but gained independence from the cosmic strings that controlled it. Living as a doll brought its own challenges. She could be physically destroyed, as we see when her miniature form must be recovered from the depths of Noxtella. Her ability to interact with the world became limited, requiring intermediaries and projection to accomplish her goals. Yet she embraced these limitations as the price of autonomy. Better to be a free doll than a controlled god. The miniature doll form she sometimes inhabits takes this even further. Reduced to a size that fits in the palm of a hand, she becomes almost completely vulnerable, entirely dependent on others for movement and protection. It's a radical embrace of weakness as strength, acknowledging that true power comes not from physical might, but from the ability to inspire others to act on your behalf. Throughout her long vigil, Ranni maintained her purpose through sheer force of will. While Radahn lost himself to scarlet rot, while Rykard fed himself to a serpent, while Millennia dreamed of her brother, and Morgoth defended a broken kingdom, Ranni kept her eyes fixed on her ultimate goal. She resisted madness, corruption, and despair through centuries of waiting, never wavering from her chosen path. The recruitment of the Tarnished represents the final phase of her plan. She needed someone with the potential to become Elden Lord, but without predetermined loyalty to the Golden Order. The Tarnished, brought back from death and exile, represented a wild card in the cosmic game. They had the blessing of grace, but weren't bound by its implications. They could grow strong enough to kill gods, but retained free will in how they used that strength. Ranni's approach to the Tarnished mixtures manipulation with genuine emotion. She presents herself initially as a mysterious figure offering an accord, a transactional relationship with clear benefits for both parties. But as the relationship develops, something more emerges. The offering of the Dark Moon Ring, traditionally a proposal of marriage in Carian custom, suggests real affection beyond mere utility. Yet even this emotional connection serves her greater purpose. By becoming her consort, the Tarnished doesn't just aid her plan, but becomes integral to it. They represent the bridge between her vision and its implementation, the free agent who chooses to enable her cosmic revolution. Their agency in accepting or rejecting her quest reinforces her philosophical position. Even gods should rule only by consent of those they govern. The journey to retrieve the Fingerslayer blade from Nokron reveals the depths of heresy Ranni was willing to embrace. This weapon, forged by the Nox people in their eternal cities, was designed for one purpose: to kill the Two Fingers themselves. Its very existence was blasphemy, proof that someone, somewhere, had imagined resistance to the greater will long before Ranni's rebellion. The Nox civilization, banished underground for their transgressions, had pursued their own form of resistance. They created artificial life, sought to forge their own lords, and ultimately crafted weapons capable of harming the servants of the outer gods. Ranni's alliance with their legacy, her use of their ultimate weapon, connects her rebellion to a longer tradition of resistance against cosmic tyranny. Killing her. Two Fingers with the Fingerslayer blade wasn't just symbolic. It severed the last connection between her and the greater will's direct influence. The Two Fingers had been her designated handler, her cosmic parole officer, the entity that would guide her toward her predetermined fate. By destroying them, she didn't just reject their authority, but eliminated their ability to enforce it. The death of the Two Fingers triggered the final safeguard, the baleful shadow that hunted her. This Red Wolf assassin, bearing Blaidd's form but not his consciousness, represented the greater will's last attempt to bring its wayward Empyrean to heel. That Ranni anticipated even this, preparing for the Tarnished to defeat it, shows how thoroughly she had mapped out every contingency. With all obstacles removed, Ranni could finally enact her vision, the Age of Stars. This ending doesn't promise traditional happy endings or restored paradise. Instead, she offers something far more radical: absence. She would take her order, her influence, her very presence, and remove it to such a distance that it could no longer directly interfere with mortal lives. The 1,000-year journey she proposes to her consort isn't a honeymoon, but a vigil. They would guard the new order from afar, ensuring that no new cosmic entity could easily claim dominion over the lands between. Its governance through non-governance, rule through absence, order maintained by preventing any other order from taking hold. This vision has sparked intense debate within the community. Some see it as the most hopeful ending, finally freeing the lands between from cycles of cosmic abuse. Others view it as abandonment, leaving a wounded world to fend for itself without guidance or protection. The translation differences between Japanese and English versions have only deepened these disagreements, with nuances of meaning shifting Ranni's intentions from benevolent to coldly indifferent. What remains consistent across interpretations is Ranni's fundamental belief that freedom, however terrible, is preferable to comfortable slavery. She doesn't promise that her age will be better in any traditional sense. People will suffer, struggle, and die without divine intervention to save them. But they will do so as free agents, their fates determined by their own choices rather than cosmic script. The mythological parallels in Ranni's story resonate across cultures. Like Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, she stole death from the divine order. Like Lucifer's rebellion against heaven, she chose to fall rather than serve. Like the Gnostic concept of the demiurge, she recognized the ruling god as a false authority to be overcome. These archetypal rebellions against divine authority speak to something fundamental in human consciousness, the desire for self-determination, even at terrible cost. From Software has woven these themes throughout their works, but Ranni represents perhaps their most complete exploration of the rebel figure. Unlike Gwyn, who sacrificed himself to preserve his order, or Vendrick, who fled from his responsibilities, Ranni actively destroyed the system that created her. She didn't just reject power, but transformed it into something entirely new. The moral complexity of her actions resists simple judgment. Was she justified in causing such widespread suffering for her philosophical ideals? Does the eventual freedom she offers validate the immediate horror she unleashed? These questions don't have clean answers, and perhaps that's the point. In a world governed by absolute cosmic authority, Ranni introduced moral ambiguity, forcing players to grapple with uncomfortable ethical calculations. Her conspiracy reveals the fragility of even divine order. The Golden Order, for all its apparent permanence and power, could be undone by a single, determined individual with the right resources and patience. The very defenses meant to ensure compliance, the two fingers, the shadows, the predetermined fates, became vulnerabilities to exploit. Ranni turned the system's strength against itself, using its own rules to break free from its control. The player's role in completing her questline adds another layer of meaning. We become complicit in her conspiracy, carrying out tasks whose full implications we might not initially understand. By the time we grasp the full scope of her plan, we're already invested, already partially responsible. This mirrors how real-world conspiracies and revolutions draw in participants who might not have agreed if presented with the full picture up front. The relationship between Ranni and the Tarnished can be read multiple ways. Is it genuine love developing between two individuals who recognize something kindred in each other? Is it manipulation by a goddess who needs a powerful tool to complete her plan? Is it something more complex? A meeting of equals where both parties use and are used by each other for mutual benefit? The game leaves room for all interpretations, refusing to definitively answer whether Ranni's affections are real or performed. What seems clear is that Ranni represents a unique ending among From Software's conclusions. Where most endings involve either preserving or replacing existing power structures, Ranni seeks to fundamentally alter the relationship between divine and mortal. She doesn't want to be a better god or a different god. She wants to be a distinct god, present but not controlling, influential but not dominating. This radical reimagining of divine governance speaks to contemporary anxieties about authority, surveillance, and control. In an age where technology enables unprecedented monitoring and influence over individual lives, Ranni's promise of a distant, hands-off authority resonates with desires for privacy and autonomy. Her rebellion against the Two Fingers' constant observation and guidance mirrors modern concerns about algorithmic control and data-driven manipulation. The community's embrace of Ranni as a character reflects this resonance. Despite, or perhaps because of, her morally gray actions, she's become one of the most beloved figures in Elden Ring. Players appreciate her agency, her refusal to accept predetermined fate, and her willingness to sacrifice everything for her beliefs. She represents the path not taken by so many other From Software characters who ultimately capitulated to or were destroyed by the systems they opposed. Her legacy extends beyond her own ending. Even players who choose different paths must grapple with what she represents. Her questline reveals the constructed nature of the Golden Order, the fallibility of the Two Fingers, and the possibility of resistance against cosmic authority. Once you understand what Ranni has shown you, you can never again see the greater will as inevitable or natural. She has introduced doubt into divine certainty. The visual design of Ranni reinforces her themes. The witch's hat that obscures her face, the four arms that mark her as something beyond human, the spectral blue form that suggests presence without substance. Every element emphasizes her liminal status between states of being. She exists in boundaries and margins, neither fully alive nor dead, neither completely divine nor mortal, neither entirely present nor absent. Her tower in the Three Sisters, perpetually shrouded in night and glintstone rain, serves as a physical manifestation of her isolation and power. While her siblings' towers fell to ruin or corruption, Ranni's remains pristine but empty, maintained by illusion and memory rather than physical presence. It's a monument to absence, a structure that exists to mark what is no longer there. The progression of her questline mirrors the journey from ignorance to understanding, from serving power to questioning it. We begin by simply following directions, hunting for items and defeating enemies without full context. Gradually, the pieces come together, revealing the vast conspiracy we've become part of. By the end, we must make an informed choice, complete her plan knowing its implications, or turn away, leaving her vision unfulfilled. This structure makes the player complicit in a way that simple exposition never could. We don't just learn about Ranni's rebellion, we participate in it, become agents of it, bear responsibility for its completion. Our agency merges with hers, creating a synthesis of divine will and mortal choice that embodies her philosophical position. As we stand at the end of this journey through conspiracy and rebellion, it becomes clear that Ranni's true victory wasn't in destroying her body or killing the Two Fingers. It was in proving that rebellion was possible at all. She demonstrated that even the most fundamental aspects of reality, life, death, fate itself, could be challenged and changed by sufficient will and planning. The lands between, after Ranni's ending, would be a fundamentally different place. Not necessarily better or worse in simple terms, but changed at its most basic level. The comfortable certainties of divine order would be replaced by the terrible freedom of self-determination. People would have to create their own meaning, forge their own purposes, build their own orders without cosmic authority to validate or condemn their choices. Some would thrive in this environment, finally free to pursue paths previously forbidden by divine law. Others would struggle without the structure and meaning the Golden Order provided. Many would likely wish for the return of divine certainty, even with its restrictions and oppression. But that's the nature of freedom. It includes the freedom to fail, to suffer, to make wrong choices and bear their consequences. Ranni understood this and accepted it as the price of liberation. Her 1,000-year journey into the dark represents not abandonment, but vigilance, ensuring that the freedom she purchased with blood and betrayal wouldn't be quickly surrendered to the next cosmic authority seeking dominion. She would guard humanity's independence from the distance, a cold and remote presence that protects by absence rather than intervention. The brilliance of From Software's narrative design lies in how it forces players to grapple with these complexities without providing easy answers. Ranni isn't portrayed as purely heroic or villainous. Her actions caused immense suffering, but they also opened possibilities previously unimaginable. She betrayed family and friends, but in service to a vision of liberation that extended beyond personal gain. She offers freedom, but freedom that comes with loneliness, fear, and uncertainty. In the end, Ranni the Witch stands as one of gaming's most compelling explorations of rebellion against divine authority. Her conspiracy wasn't just political but metaphysical, challenging not just who rules but the very concept of rule itself. She asks whether beings have the right to determine their own fate, even if they lack the wisdom to choose well, whether freedom is worth any price, whether the absence of God is preferable to the presence of a tyrant. These questions don't have universal answers, and Ranni doesn't pretend they do. She simply made her choice and executed it with ruthless efficiency, leaving others to judge whether the world she created is better than the one she destroyed. In that ambiguity, that refusal to provide moral certainty, lies perhaps her greatest rebellion of all, forcing us to think for ourselves rather than accepting prescribed truth. Thank you for joining me on this deep exploration into one of Elden Ring's most fascinating conspiracies. The story of Ranni's rebellion reminds us that even in worlds governed by cosmic authorities and divine certainties, individual will can reshape reality itself. If you found value in unraveling these mysteries of the lands between, please consider subscribing to Keen 7 Lore. Your support enables these investigations into gaming's deepest lore, and I'm grateful for each of you who joins our community of seekers. Until next time, remember, in the Age of Stars, we forge our own constellations in the dark.